This is rental car number 93, and today I'm driving the 2017 Nissan Versa SV. This is a four-door subcompact car, and I'm going to call it budget-friendly because it MSRPs for about $15,000 to $16,000. I want to mention price right up front because last week I was driving something considerably more expensive. That was the 2018 Audi A6. I mean, that's $35,000 more than this car, so we need to frame our expectations a little bit. But there's still plenty of good stuff to talk about the Versa, so let's jump in right away by popping the hood and taking a look at what's underneath. So right when I popped the hood is when I first started to notice some creative things Nissan has done to cut costs on the Versa. And what I'm talking about is this mechanism right here to hold up the hood. There's nothing wrong with this. It works great. Just notice that this is slightly different than most of the other cars that I've been driving lately. And to be honest, it did take me just a couple of extra seconds to get it to latch properly. But again, no big deal. It's just something I wanted to point out to you. So now that we got the hood open, we can take a look at what's underneath. The Versa is a front-wheel drive vehicle. It's got a 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine, and the transmission is a continuously variable speed automatic. In layman's terms, that basically means you're not going to feel the gears shifting. You're not going to get that jerky feeling while it's shifting through all the gears. Horsepower-wise, you don't have a whole lot here, just 109 horsepower. But because of that lack of power, you do get some really good gas mileage. You get 31 miles per gallon in the city, 39 on the highway, and when you combine those, the rating is about 34 miles per gallon. Not bad. And you also get a 10.8 gallon fuel tank, and that fuel tank is located on the driver's side of the vehicle. So those are all these specs. I don't know about you, but those numbers mean very little to me. What I really like to know is what's it like to actually drive the Versa. Alright, so first off, let's start with acceleration. Remember, we only have 109 horsepower on this vehicle, which is not a whole lot. So here I am in an empty parking lot, and I'm just going to slam down on the accelerator to kind of give you a feel for how this car moves. So obviously it's not great, right? You're not going to win any car races in the Versa, but it's decent. Look, I had no trouble accelerating on and off the highway. I guess you only accelerate on the highway, but you get what I mean. Keeping up with traffic is not a big deal. The one thing that I personally didn't like about the Versa is the handling. When you're going around these curves, I think it's because you have such small wheels, you really don't feel like you're hugging the road quite as much as I would like. I feel almost like if I push the car a little bit harder than I normally do, I'm probably going to spin out a little bit. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just a general feeling that I got while I was driving this vehicle. But please take that with a huge grain of salt because I'm not really a performance guy. I drive these cars mostly for work and spend most of the time behind the wheel, just going 65 to 70 miles an hour on a boring interstate and not really doing anything exciting. So for that, the Versa worked fine. I really have no major complaints. So with that being said, let's jump inside the vehicle so you can take a look at what kind of amenities you're going to be able to enjoy if you do decide to jump behind the wheel of a Versa. So let's start with the key, because there's no key fob with this one. You actually get a physical key. Pretty simple setup here. 4 buttons on the front, nothing on the back. Lock, unlock, a trunk release button, and a panic button. And that trunk release button actually works. I say that because I've had a couple of sedans lately where I couldn't get the trunk to open up with the key fob, so just to be safe, I tested it out with the Versa, and it works fine. And obviously, no push button start here. It's just a normal ignition like it used to be on all vehicles. Insert that key and turn it, and the vehicle starts right up. And now that we have the car on, we can kind of take a look at the setup, specifically the steering wheel setup. There's a number of buttons on here. Here on the left-hand side, you have your volume rockers and then buttons to interact with the entertainment features on the vehicle. Also, your phone controls at the bottom. On the right-hand side are your cruise controls. It's kind of tough to describe these buttons. I think the best way I can kind of convey this to you is that they feel a lot like ATM buttons. At least that's how they feel to me, right? Good quality buttons, but not the best thing out there, if you know what I mean. Anyway, moving on, above the steering wheel you have a pretty nice gauge cluster with 2 nice-sized dials on the left and right, and then a small digital display right in the center. So the display is pretty small, but there are some features here worth mentioning. There's 2 trip counters, trip A and trip B, which you would expect, but you can also check your miles per gallon, both instantaneously to see how you're doing right when you're driving that second, and also an average for the vehicle itself and then an average for the last time you actually filled up. So those are kind of fun to play around with. And then shifting your focus down and to the left, you have all your standard controls down here, right? You have your window controls and your door locks made out of plastic buttons, but they feel pretty good. Above there, you have your door latch and your door lock. Up on the dash, you have the control to adjust or turn on and off traction control. Below there, you have your releases for both the fuel cap and the hood of the car. And then way back up top, past that traction control button, you have the controls to adjust the side view mirrors. And speaking of those side view mirrors, they're pretty standard. I mean, they work fine. Look, there's no visibility issues with the Versa, but there's nothing fancy like blindside detection or anything like that on this vehicle. Just a standard, normal-sized side view mirror. And I kind of skipped this unintentionally, but the driver's seat is adjustable in a number of ways. Obviously, you can recline. There's also an adjustment for the height, so you can raise or lower the seat. And then up front, you have your standard bar, metal bar, just to pull it so you can slide the seat forward and backward. I spent a lot of time in this car today. I probably drove for almost 5 hours, and I found the seats to be pretty comfortable. I didn't have that urge to get out of the vehicle and stretch my legs, so that's a positive, at least in my book. Anyway, let's move on by looking up towards the ceiling of the vehicle. Not a whole lot up here. You do get a light with some pretty simple controls to adjust whether or not the lights are going to turn on when you open up a door. There's also a microphone. That's that thing you see there with 3 black dots, and then just a standard rear view mirror. With your simple old-fashioned flip controls to adjust, just in case someone has those high beams on right behind you. And then below there you have 2 large vents along with your hazard button right in the center. Below there you have your infotainment sort of setup, a CD player here. I was actually kind of lucky enough that someone left me a CD. I don't know who Don Jizzy is, but I lasted all of 10 seconds when I played this CD. Anyway, the whole setup here is pretty standard and basic. There's not a whole lot of exciting features. I was kind of disappointed that this one doesn't come with Bluetooth connectivity, so I wasn't able to connect my cell phone to the vehicle. But the radio works fine, CD player works fine, and everything is adjustable pretty easily because there's nice big buttons right on the front of this whole area. And I want to mention also that there is an antenna right on top of the vehicle towards the back, and the antenna is removable. It's just twist off, works pretty easily. It's good to know, just in case you want to take this thing through a car wash. Anyway, below there, your climate controls. These kind of keep with the theme of things being a little bit basic. 3 dials here, fan on top. You control the vents on the left-hand side, and you control the temperature on the right-hand side. To be honest, all 3 dials feel a little bit cheap. The plastic is kind of hollow feeling, but they work fine. It was 90 today, and I was able to get the car fairly cool fairly quickly, which is all you really want in a vehicle like this. And then below the climate controls, you have a number of ports down here. You do have a DC power port, although you will need an adapter because it's in the form of a cigarette lighter. You also have a USB port and an auxiliary jack down here, along with 2 cup holders. Behind there's the gear shift. It's made out of plastic, but it feels pretty okay. Shift through those gears pretty smoothly, and there is an overdrive button on the side. Behind there is your parking brake. It's in the form of a handbrake. Again, made out of plastic, but feels okay and works just fine. And then behind there you do have 1 more power port. Again, you will need an adapter, but it's nice to have right there. And then there are 2 more cup holders kind of between the 2 front seats. Then shifting your focus back up towards the front seat, there is a nice sized glove box. It's actually fairly deep, so you can get a lot of stuff in here. And it's nice to see that on the door of the glove box, there's actually a shelf kind of unit, which will just help you organize all your stuff that much easier. All right, so that's all the major highlights of the front seat. Why don't we jump in the back seat real quick and take a look at what kind of amenities your passengers are going to get to enjoy if they go along on a ride with you. First off, legroom, pretty decent, especially for a car this size. I'm 6 feet tall, that driver's seat is pushed back a good ways, and I still have about 6 inches of room between my knees and the back of that front seat. Not a whole lot else back here. On the back of the passenger seat from the front, there is a small, I say pocket. It's made out of the same material as the cloth on the interior of the seats. This doesn't feel great, but I guess it's nice to have. Another nice feature is that there are really shallow car seat anchors back here, so it should be fairly easy to connect a car seat if you need to do that. Also, another great feature is that these seats do fold down relatively easily. You just have to give a gentle pull on these 2 pins towards the top of the seat, and the seat folds down without really any effort at all, which is great because when they are folded down, you do get a lot more space when you haul things using the trunk. And that opening between the trunk space and the cabin of the vehicle is a fairly decent size. It's a little narrow compared to some of the other cars in this category, but I think it'll work great if you need to haul something a little bit bigger. Maybe you're buying a bed at IKEA or something like that. All in all, folding these seats down and using it, I think is going to be very functional and pretty easy to do. All right, so let's close things out by first putting those back seats back up in their normal position and then popping the trunk so that we can take a look at what it looks like if those seats aren't folded down. Now remember, this is a subcompact car, so it's not a huge vehicle, but despite that, you still get some decent space back here. I am a little disappointed that the wheel wells and other parts of the car are infringing on the space just a little bit. It would have been nice to see a large rectangular shape back here. It makes it easier to haul things, but nevertheless, you still get a good amount of space back here. You can also lift up the floor of the trunk and reveal a spare tire. Not a full-size spare, but hey, it's better than nothing, especially since other manufacturers like Kia have been getting rid of this completely lately. So it's nice to see that Nissan isn't following suit, and that there's also plenty of other space down here to maybe keep some tools or some other odds and ends. All right, so that's pretty much all the major highlights of the trunk space. And if I'm being honest, that's pretty much everything that's interesting end to end on the 2017 Nissan Versa. I was lucky enough to have this car for 3 days. I think I mentioned this before, but just today alone, I spent over 5 hours behind the wheel of this vehicle. Mostly highway miles, but I got to do a little bit of city driving as well. So I feel like I've got plenty of time behind the wheel to give you a recommendation. And honestly, that's what you should be asking me at this point in the video, right? Would I recommend this car to you? Yes or no? And the answer is yes. Look, keep in mind that it's cheap, right? 15 grand, that's MSRP by the way. You could probably knock that thing down quite a bit further. But for 15 grand, I think you get a very reliable, decent vehicle with all the basic features that you need. So if you're open to trying out a budget-friendly, subcompact vehicle, I think you should give this one a try. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time when I rent my 94th rental car. I'll see you then.